So there's that. So just everybody remember what I said up until now, because it's live on Facebook, but it won't be on the recording. All the precursor backstory stuff, just there, it's done. You
We
missed it.
got it.
Sorry. All right, now I'll share my screen, and I actually have the financial tracker thing up that I talked about. So just real quick, of course, I can filter this for a date range. Right now, it's filtered for just income and expenses, so I can actually remove those filters. And over here, I can just download the whole thing to a CSV file, right? And the instant I do that, it will download, and of course I can, like I said, then it'll be in a format where in 30 seconds I can start running actual Excel pivot tables on the data. So really, really easy to do that way. Which again, so you're compiling it in a, and by the way, and just for the sake of comparison, because of the questions to, what about using QBO? Much, much harder to get a report out of QBO and get it flattened out into a file that's in proper form to run pivot tables on it, right? Because it'll export the accounts in the hierarchical structure so that you have an account, and then it doesn't copy the account name all the way down. It just shows indented all the transactions in that account. To get that into a flat file takes some work. You have to clean the data a little bit. Here, you export to a CSV and it's ready to go because it's already, organized in a flat file kind of format, as you see here. So that is, another benefit perhaps to using Airtable. So here's what I want to do. I'm actually going to create a brand new base. What I'm going to create could easily be added into this financial tracker, but I just want it nice and clean for the sake of illustration. So I'm going to start from scratch, and we're going to call this contractor base. Enter. I don't want to share. I just want to create. Okay, so I'm going to change the colors on this just because my original one is the same color, and I want to make sure I can clearly distinguish it. Okay, so the first table I always call like admin or something like that. It's where I'll put general notes about things I want to do with the rest of the base. And in this case, because like when I did the one that this is based on, I was proposing to set something like this up for that contractor because, like I said, he had no systems. The contractor, who sort of inspired this, and so I'd asked him for a copy of his logo and stuff. So I put that logo in this admin table as an attachment, so that later on, and I'll show you the one I did for him at the end. Like I said, I can create a nice looking form that can be used as an estimate or an invoice or otherwise. And I was able to get his logo nicely on there at the top. You'll see it looks really slick. So we'll need three tables here, right? Each of these is a table. So I'm going to create one empty table, and we're going to call this jobs. Another one we're going to call tasks. And then we're going to create one called clients. Okay, clients actually I want first, then jobs, then tasks. Okay, now the client stuff is pretty easy. So the first column is going to be client name. Okay, let me quickly hide the notes and attachments. And I'm going through some of this stuff fast because I've done a number of Airtable demos already. So I'm sort of going on the assumption that you've seen this before and know how to do some of these basic things. But obviously you can watch the replay and slow things down if you need to. Or if you're live here with me, just stop, ask me a question, and I'm happy to stop and go over anything. Meanwhile, checking in on the live feed here just to see who's watching on the Facebook page. Okay, perfect. So client name, and I hide those two fields, by the way, just to get them out of the way while I'm creating new fields. So I want maybe the type, right? And this is going to be a drop down. We'll say single select, and maybe we have residential and commercial. Okay, just thinking of contractors. The contact name, which in many cases will be the same as the client name, but might be different. I like kind of making the space for that, right? Email, and Airtable has a specific field type for email. Let's do phone, and same thing. Okay, then we'll do street address and city, state, and zip, right? So city, state. Now you can do the state as a drop down. By the way, if you Google like a list of states, you can pretty much get that and copy and paste that into here. If we have time and any of you wants me to, I can go back later and show you how to build that really quick actually. But like I said, you can Google it, get the list, you can drop it in here and then convert it to a drop down and it'll kind of render everything you need exactly as you need it. And then the zip we can do as a number, right? And we can validate that, obviously no decimals, just an integer. And save. Okay, so that's everything we need for clients. Obviously, if there's more information you want to track about a client, you're welcome to add all the columns that you want. There's no sort of rules on this and no limitations, obviously. Okay, so next let's build out our jobs table. And the jobs table you're going to see is actually kind of simple. So the first thing we have is job number. Okay, then, and let me go back here. Now I can unhide these. And you can move them either by clicking and dragging the columns, or I can, in the hide fields dialog, I can drag them down. A lot of times the notes and attachments are the last thing you want, right? And I always include these columns for notes and attachments because you just never know. You might want to, they might send you a file that's not necessarily the logo, which, like I said, I'd put in the admin tab, but, it might be something related to the client information specifically. And notes are never a bad thing to have. All right, the next thing we're going to add to this is going to be called tasks. Okay, and this is going to be a lookup, a link to the task table, but I can't set that up just yet because I need to set up the tasks table first, right? So I'll come back and finish setting this up later. The next thing is going to be the balance. And again, we're going to finish the setup on that later. And then the client, we're going to set up as a link to the clients table. So over here, link to another record from clients. And we do not need to allow linking to multiple records. You would only ever have one client on one job. You can repeat the client among several jobs for sure, but you would only want one client on one particular job. Then once we have the client, and let me just put myself in here real quick as an example, residential. All right, and that's good enough for now. So back over here on jobs, if I can choose the client from here. And you saw if there are blank rows here, it will look at those as blank records. So sometimes you just want to delete those. Okay, but now that I've got a client in here, I can do a lookup on the contact name. So we're going to say contact. Okay, and this is going to be a lookup. Okay, and we're going to look up on the client, and we're going to get the contact name. So that way, when I'm setting up a job, as soon as I've chosen the client, it shows me who the contact is, right? And then we want two date-based fields. We have the estimate date. Okay, and then we have the estimate accepted date. Okay, everybody's real quiet. Any questions so far?
This is great. This is exactly what I need for a client.
Perfect. Wait till you see how this all comes together. It's actually really cool. And I can't take credit. Like I said, I learned this from following somebody else's template. Go ahead, Dennis.
Could you go back and how you link the lookup table to the...
Sure. So first you choose that the field type is going to be lookup.
Okay.
Then Airtable is going to look within the current table and say, okay, what do you want to look up on? There has to be a field in this table that's linked to another table, right? Which the client is. The client is set up as a lookup to the client's table.
Okay.
So it actually defaulted to this because it's the only column in this table that's linked anywhere else. And so then it gives me, once I've chosen the table here, it will give me a list of the fields in that table to choose that it's going to pull in.
Okay.
So that's
Okay,
how
thanks.
once I pick the client, it's able to pull the contact for that client.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. It works kind of like a VLOOKUP in Excel, but it's a little, it's a little different because, like I said, it's dependent on having to have something that's linked to another table, and then based on that common item, it can do a lookup on it.
Okay, thanks.
You got it. Okay, so I think that's it for jobs, and now we're ready to set up the tasks. All right, so let's do that next. All right, so the first thing in tasks is going to be the task. And this is where you'll see, we'll write kind of a description of the task. Again, I'm going to hide these to get them out of the way for now. Okay, then we have the job number, which is going to be a link to the jobs. And here we are going to allow linking to multiple records, and you'll see why that's critically important. And it actually lets you do something really cool with the data later on. Over here, we're going to create a field, a number-based field, and we're going to call it line number. And this very simply later on, you'll see where it's useful, is it's going to allow us to force what order we want things to show up in when we later, build the estimate form or the invoice form off of this. So again, we don't need decimals, and that's good. Next, we'll have a description, which is going to be what's called long text, right? That's where we can write out a long description about what we're kind of expanding on what the task is. And then we definitely want to type here, and this is going to be a drop down. So we're going to do single select, and let's look at what some of our options are going to be here. We'll have the way I did it, and again, I'm just giving you suggestions. You might have other ideas about how you want to set it up. So I'll have labor. We'll do labor for a change order. That's how I ended up distinguishing, changes, because I went around and added things to the job after I had hired the guy. Materials, payments, discount, and I think that's good for now. And of course, you can, have fun with the colors, right? Paid version of Airtable gives you more colors to choose from. Probably not the reason you want to pay for Airtable, but it's a nice little enhancement. Okay, so that's the type. Okay, then of course we have the amount, which is going to be currency. Okay, here we do want decimals. The $sign is fine for the symbol. And we do want to allow negative numbers because payments are going to be entered as negative numbers. That's how it's going to be able to net out, charges for the work with payments, which of course then reduce what we owe on the job. So that's important. Now I can bring back my notes and attachments and bring those down to the bottom. Okay, and then what we can do is let's add another column here. Scroll to the right. Task approved. And this is going to be a checkbox. And it's cool, there's different styles for checkboxes, so we can use the little thumbs up. Okay, and I think that's going to be it. The only other thing I'll add is we'll want to do a client lookup here. So client is going to be a lookup. Okay, based on the job number, we're going to pull in the client. It's obviously nice to have the client listed here alongside each task that we're going to describe. Okay, now I'm going to just fill in some dummy data here so I can go back and complete the couple of other things that I said I would need to go back and complete, right? So let's just do something simple. I'll just kind of copy off of mine. I have mine, if you haven't figured this out already, on my other screen. The job here I started, we need the job number. So let's do that. So we'll put so I'm going to bounce back and forth a little bit as I fill in this data. Okay, and then the job number, now I can select it. from what I've chosen. Okay, I'll just call this line number 1. Description. I'm just going to copy what I had in my own. Okay, this is labor. Okay, the amount was actually $750 for this. And this comes in really when you're first setting up the job. The way this works, and I'll show this to you later on when we have a little bit more data in here, is you can actually prepare the estimate and basically present it to the client and let them kind of check off which things they want to do and which things they want to leave out. And obviously the unchecked things, don't get done. And then you can filter it for a job number and for what's been approved. And I notice I have a little typo there. So you can see what you're actually going to do for the client. And like what I did with this guy, there were some things originally that I didn't want to do right away, so I didn't check them off. And then I went back later and said, okay, yeah, let's do this other thing now. So we can just uncheck them. Or check them off at that point, I mean. Okay, so and notice it looked up the client once I chose the job number here. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go back to jobs. And so the balance, this is going to be an interesting one. And I'm going to go through this one slowly because this is probably the trickiest thing on this whole thing. Okay. So this is going to be what's called a rollup. So I'm going to double click this and we're going to change the type to a rollup. And a rollup is similar to a lookup. It's going to be looking into another table and it's going to look to, but it's almost like a sum if in Excel. It's looking to sum all the numbers that have something in common. So what's the common thing going to be? It's going to be the tasks, right? Why does it say tasks 2? That's weird to me. Hold on a second. Cancel. Oh, that's why, because in here I have a tasks column. I had it already. Let me just see something. All right, so let's move this one because I don't need 2 task fields in here. So, and apparently I'd created 2. So let's put this one here. That's the one we really want. And this way I will get rid of this one. And rename that. It makes it clear. That's why this was important to stop and fix. Okay, so now we're back to the balance. This is going to be a rollup, which again is like a sum if in Excel. It's looking for something that's common to 2 different tables, and it's going to be looking for something that's got an amount associated with it, right? So in the tasks, I had the amount, right? And the amount is based on the task. So when I choose a field in this table, it's going to be the task. And when I choose a field, it's going to be the amount. And hold on. Oh, I need to choose a function. So down here, it's a little hard to see because it's encroaching on the bottom of my screen. But once you've chosen where it's going to get it and what it's going to sum up, then you need a function because it can do an average, a count. So if I start typing sum up here, then I can choose my sum values and click save. Okay, and then it gets me my 750, right? So if I go to tasks over here and I add in something else, let's go back and add something else. And I'll just add stucco. And again, I have to choose the job number. Okay, we'll call this line number 2. And I'll just copy and paste the descriptions. This is labor. Okay, and this is 650. Okay, and we'll say both of these tasks are approved. Okay, and then I go back over here to jobs and see what it's doing. So it's accumulating the tasks based on the job number. So that's how it knows based on the task. So this is why this had to be a multiple select, right? And now it's accumulating based on the tasks, all the items that are associated. So the way this is linked up, because the job number basically and the tasks come together to allow it to total this. Let's format this like a number. We'll do it for currency. and save. So this is critical. This jobs table at all times now will show me for a particular job number what the total balance is, right? So now let's go in here and I'll add in a payment.
Can you make it dependent on whether you check the box?
You can filter things so that it will only include things that are checked off. Yes, that's a little more complicated, but what I ended up doing instead on mine was that the things that weren't selected, I changed the job number so that it wouldn't accumulate for those. That was an easier way to address that issue. So basically what I did was I took the same job number if it wasn't selected, and I called it like 100,000 dash space NA. And that way anything that wasn't selected got assigned that job number. And again, that was just easier than doing the other work to make it a little bit more slick, if you know what I mean.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then if somebody changed their minds if I changed my mind and decided, you know what, I do want to do this now, then I just change it back to the job number without the NA, and then of course it goes back to being accumulated here. So the answer to your question is definitely yes. 2 ways to do it. Easy way is just alter the job number because the job number drives everything here. That's kind of how this was built. Okay, so back to tasks. Payment, same job number, and you can start typing just like any drop down in like QuickBooks, and it will find it in the list. I'll call this number. The way I did mine, and one of the reasons I added in the line number thing was I wanted to be able to easily group labor together, materials together, and then payments together. So for the payment, I might give it a line number of like 10 for now, right? That leaves space for more labor and some materials. The description would be just the payment information, right? It would be like check number, 1005 with today's date on it, 1/17/20, something like that. Perhaps without the typo. The type would be payments. And this also, by the way, because I have the type here, I can again easily sort and filter and say only show me the labor. And notice you get a total down here. See at the bottom of my screen in the amount column, it shows me the total. Right, and then I can, while I'm in the task view, of course, I can filter it for a single job number, so that when I'm looking at that total, I'm seeing the total just for that job number. Because what's going to happen is let's say I gave him a deposit on this of like, $500. So I put in. Remember, I said I had to allow negative numbers for payments, so minus 500. Now the total is 900, of course. Right, and you can group it by type. So if I group this by type. Now I can see a subtotal. There's the labor, there's the payments, right? The net is way down here. And if I have more than one job number, at the same time as I group it, I would add a filter for the one particular job number that I'm analyzing. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I want to sort of add in here. I'll pull out the grouping. And the other thing is, this is I'll rename this view and call it the master list. Okay, but now I probably want to create a view for each job as I start adding jobs to this, right? So what I'll do is over here on this ellipsis, I'll choose duplicate view. I'll call this job number 100,000, and then I'll just apply the filter where the job number contains 100,000, right? And then I can just click away on that. So that this will only show me stuff that's related to job number 1000, and now I can make the groupings just for this view based on the type. And now I have a nice little view, and I can toggle from here back to the master task list. So the way this is designed, the way I'm thinking of it anyway, is as you add new jobs, you would just create new views off the master task list, so that you can focus on just one, sort of job or type of job at one time. Okay. Let me go through and make sure we've sort of...
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you just go back and run it by me how you created the views?
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, what I'll do is I'll remove the view and start over. So we're in the tasks table, right? Let me go back to this job view, and over here on this ellipsis, I'm going to choose delete view. So now I just have, so these are the views here, right? I only have the one right now, which is the master task list. Anytime I want to create a new view, over here I can click the ellipsis and choose duplicate view.
Okay.
As soon as I do that, it's going to put this in kind of an edit mode so I can rename it. So in this case, since the whole nature of the view is based on having a view for one specific job number, I'll title it accordingly. I call it job number 100,000. Right, so I've renamed the view. Now when I click this little drop down, you can see the two views. And by the way, you can reorder them, right, which is kind of nice. And it's got the search. So if I know once I have a lot of jobs, I can start typing 100 and it will filter out the list down to just the view that I'm looking for. So they've been pretty smart about this stuff in terms of making it really easy for you to find what you need when you need it. So once that's created, now I have the two views and I can toggle between them. But while I'm in one view, the options that I apply are unique to that view, right? So now I can choose to group it, and I'll group it by type. And the filter obviously needs to be applied where the job number contains is really the best choice here. And then just do the whole job number 100,000. And obviously there's nothing further to filter out because it's, you know, that's all there is. And so now I have this view defined. And I can go back to my master task list and you'll see this one is still in sort of grid format.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't create the view, could you still filter the particular job you were looking for in that job column? I see a little.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I can filter within this view. I can just
Right.
filter for that particular job number.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I'm used to access databases.
Mm-hmm.
And in my parlance, this would probably be called a query. And can you do like and or type of, you know, the criteria have?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I can add filters and you have and or.
Okay, so this is essentially a query with a pretty
That's what
face on it.
Airtable, I've often described it as Access and Excel got together, had a baby, and that baby started taking steroids.
Okay, now also in my background, I'm used to primary keys and foreign keys to linking tables.
Yeah, so
Where
your
is that?
primary key is always the first column. Everything is going to be looked up based on whatever the first column is.
Okay, and so it has to be unique in my experience.
Airtable won't force you to make it unique like Access would,
Mhm.
but in theory, that's what you should do. In this case, it's not going to work that way necessarily. I might have, you know, several items with the same name, but the way this is built, it's still going to accumulate it in the jobs by the task and the job number. So if I have two, first of all, you're going to have multiple payment items most likely, right?
Okay.
If I go in here to tasks, and what you could do, if you know, Dennis, because you understand that aspect of building a database, what you might do is the payment tasks might be appended with, you know, like the check number, right?
Okay, to make it unique.
To make it unique. So in other words, you would have to enforce that on this. Airtable will not enforce that.
Okay, also it seems to me that you could create like a lookup database where you'd have common tables like, say, city, state, that or zip code and maybe area that you could just, can you just copy those tables into
It's not quite as simple as you think, because remember the lookups are dependent upon something that links between the two tables, which means I can't. In other words, if I want to look up based on a value,
Mhm.
that value has to be tied specifically to another table, right? So
Okay.
when I'm looking up the contact here, the only reason this works is because here I have a linked field to that table. It's one of my frustrations, honestly, with Airtable, that there's not something that works more like a true lookup where I can put in any value and have it look for that value. The value I put in that I'm looking up has to be associated with something else in the same table that's linked to the other table where it's getting the lookup value from, right?
Okay.
If that makes sense. But that reminds me, if we want to, let me show you how to do the state thing, because it's a really cool process what you can do with this. Because normally I would want to make the state a drop down, right? And that enforces consistency so that I don't have some people in California where I just have CA and others where the word California is all written out, right? There's a number of reasons why I'd want to enforce this with a drop down. If I simply change this to a drop down, all right, and do a single select, initially manually I have to put in each option. There's 52 options, right? We have 50. I always get confused how many states we have. It's 52 though, right?
50, I thought.
or 50. You see, that's what I always do. I always think it's 52. Anyway, so it's whatever it is.
52 cards, 50 states.
You're thinking about
52 cards, 50.
weeks.
I like that.
51
Is that? Thank you,
I was
Greg.
like 52 too. Like I'm like, wait, there's 50, only 50?
I don't know why I always do that. Yeah, it's like when did we lose 2 states?
Well, I was a history major, so I learned that a long time ago.
Because at one point it was 48, and then we added Alaska and who else? Who was this other
Hawaii.
one? Hawaii. That's what it is. My
59.
wife, who wasn't even born in this country, knows this better than I do. She's in the next room answering.
I think
All
we're
right.
thinking 52 weeks in a year. That's probably it.
Maybe Greg's right. Maybe I'm thinking of a deck of cards. Whatever it is. No, maybe it's because my brain needs round numbers, so it needs to think we started with 50 and then we added 2 to that. I don't know. Anyway, the moral of the story is I don't want to sit here keying in 50 or 48 or whatever, anything more than about 5, I don't want to do manually. So here's the trick to this, and it's based on something I learned that has to do with sort of how Airtable behaves. So we're going to leave it initially as a single line text field type, right? And then we're going to Google list of states. Let's try and type that properly. Okay, alphabetical list of 50 states, perfect. But this one's not organized well, right? I just want a linear list of states. So no, you lose. Maybe this one has it better. But I really love the abbreviated versions. This is close, but I don't know what they're doing. Like what the... So maybe if I alter my search and say list of states abbreviations.
State abbreviations, yeah.
All right. Oh, this is beautiful. This is exactly what I want. So let's go down to the bottom, and I'll show you how we can just sort of clean this quickly. What is this? Armed Forces Pacific? These are not states. These are other things, right?
Right.
District of Columbia, I get, but all right, anyway, I'm just going to take these for now. Okay, so I go all the way to the top, Control C, sheets.new, gives me a new Google Sheet. I love that command. It's one of my favorite things in the world. Some days I just like to sit in my new recliner chair and just opening up new Google Sheets like that. We're going to right click and I'm going to choose Paste Special Values Only. Look how nice that is. Then I start with Alabama. Where's Jesse? Is he not with us today? When I think of him, I think of Alabama. Control Shift down arrow, highlights all the way down to the last one. Control C to copy. Back to Airtable. I'm going to paste it in here, just in as the actual data. It's going to warn me because I'm asking it to expand the database to accommodate, it's actually 50, right? Because it says we need to add 49 more records. It's already got 1. That's also a good indicator that we've got them all. So watch what Airtable does. Now that I've got a record in the database, each with 1 state, watch this trick. And I learned this by accident one day, and I noticed the behavior, and I said, oh, that's a handy piece of information to know for exactly this kind of a use case. Because now, if I double-click this, and I say make this a single select, it will convert all the options. It'll convert every instance of what it sees in there into a choice in the single select. So boom.
Very, very cool.
And now if I double click this, by the way, just in case it's not already, I can choose to alphabetize this. Okay. And by the way, in any single select field in Airtable, you can set the order. And the order that you set in here is what drives how it gets sorted if you sort by that column, which is a really cool thing to know. So you don't have to be forced to sort things alphabetically. If you have another logic to how you want things in a column sorted, you can put these in any order, and then later when you sort the data by that column, it will conform to the order that you have established, not necessarily alphabetical. But if you do want alphabetical, double-click the column, click alphabetize, so in basically 3 clicks altogether, you can have it alphabetized. And
Hey,
now
Seth?
Yes, sir.
I was going to say, since I'm basically a lazy person, does the database or Airtable, the website, does it have template tables you
Yes,
could
there are a
just
lot of
copy?
like I said, that what inspired this was me searching around at some templates, and I didn't have anything nearly this sort of detailed or sophisticated, but I'll show you. Let me finish what I was talking about here, and then I'll show you an example of what I got from the templates that inspired this whole thing. So the next thing we want to do is I just needed this all populated here to create this field properly. Now I'm going to Control-Shift down to select everything and delete all those records. Okay, and then for me, it's California dreaming, baby, right? So I fixed that. Now I can put in Burbank. If I really wanted to get crazy, I could do a similar process for cities, but that would be a lot. Phone number, well, I'll just put in my business number. Notice because it's formatted as a phone, I don't have to put in the formatting. I just key the numbers and it takes on the formatting. And I think you all know my email address by now. Perfect. So really where the inspiration came from for this was in how when you allow multiple records, like this does, for all the tasks to be grouped to a single job number, I'm going to show you next what this drove in terms of how you can set something up that looks really cool based on having all the tasks for a job number accumulated here. So remember, for those of you who are in the financial accounting one that I did, we have these blocks that you can create, right? And I had shown you a pivot table and some other things, okay? So now I want to show you where you can create a block that's going to enable you to take what we've kind of begun to lay out here, and it's going to allow you to create a really cool looking form, which you can make different versions. One could be the estimate, one could be the invoice. Once I show you the first few steps of this, I think it's going to give, and especially because I know all of you pretty well here, I think it's going to give you some ideas that you can just run with, right? And then of course I'm always here to answer questions that you have ongoing. And if there's anybody here who's not in 97 and up, just join 97 up, because this is the stuff we do all day long every day, right? Anyway, and then you really have access to ask me all the questions you want 24/7, 365, practically. So we're going to add a block. Okay, and then let's see, what kind of block do we want to do here? I think what I want to do is page designer. Yes, page designer is definitely what I want to do. So we're going to add that to the base. Okay, and it blows up full sort of view, right? Let me just see. I'm following what I did on my own, so I want to make sure that I show you the right thing and show it to you the right way. I don't want to confuse anyone here. So just bear with me while I look on my other screen and make sure I don't sort of steer you wrong. Okay, so the first thing is we want to do it off of which table? We want to do it off of the jobs table, because that's the one that's got the tasks accumulated. Okay, and for now, we can always play around with the size later, right? Portrait is probably fine for this. So initially, it doesn't look like much, right? It's just, okay, we have it by default puts the job number here. And over here, basically on the left, you can choose which fields from the table that I've selected, which is the jobs table, that I want included here, right? So take the balance, for example. When I click on that, notice it shows me the 900, and I can stick that anywhere I want. And I have all kinds of formatting options here that I can use to choose what that balance looks like, right? I think I can even stick a, well, I can certainly add in, I can go back and add in a text label now, right? And put it next to this and call it balance. Okay, but notice here, you can also use kind of short code here, right? So if I didn't want to do this separately for some reason, I can delete this. And I did a text field here called balance, but notice if I put the field name, which would be balance, inside the squiggly brackets, I forget the official name for those. And I believe it's just balance. Squiggly bracket, boom. As long as I get the field name right, notice it converts it here to the actual number. So I can save myself a little time and space by consolidating that instead of having one text field and one field for the amount, right? Over here, I can get rid of this because I would want to do something similar and do job number, right? The field is job space number sign. So again, I might do text. And over here, I would just put the label job number, colon, squiggly, job number, close squiggly. I didn't get the number sign done, right? And that should have worked, but I may need to capitalize the J. It may be very particular. Yeah, it is very particular about how you label that field name there in order to get that to work, right? And then over here, just so you can see, I mean, most of this is going to be pretty straightforward. I can increase the size, right? So this is, you know, you start playing with this, you're going to figure this all out pretty quickly. We can do borders. And if you increase the padding, it makes those borders look kind of rounded. Or sorry, the border radius will do that. Right? And then click away, you can see, it kind of makes it look pretty. But here's the thing that I really want to show you that really makes this thing sort of kick butt. So when I start adding the tasks here, okay, the tasks, remember, in the original database, and by the way, what can be handy sometimes while you're building this is if you duplicate the tab. So in one tab, you have this dialog open, sort of full screen. In the other one, I'll close this so I can look at, I can even close the block here to get it out of the way. I want to look at things in the source data so I can kind of see what I'm doing here. So the tasks here is the one that's got all the jobs or tasks accumulated in one spot. And that was the trick to this. This, Dennis, was the thing that I saw in the templates how to do, and I was like, oh crap, this is huge. Because notice what I did. I'm going to start over on this. Down here, we're looking at all the fields available from the jobs table, right? So it's all these columns, job number, notes, attachments, tasks, balance, and so on. Okay, and down here is the tasks one. And the tasks is the one that's got the accumulation of multiple tasks in one field. This was the whole trick to this, because as soon as I click that, notice the options it gives me, one of which is the table mode, right? So I have modes. I have table, list, or inline. So I'm going to stick with table. Let's expand this. Okay, and now over here, I choose the columns. So the first one is the task. The second one might be the job number. Okay, then I can add in, where'd it go? The description. Okay, I can easily reorder these. Anytime you see one of these little sort of double ellipsis things, I can put the job number first, and notice how it reorganizes it on the table. I can resize these columns, I believe. Or I think you just resize this whole thing. There it is. And then I think you can click on, I think there's a way to resize the individual columns. I'll come back to that. Right, but the main thing is that you can see when you've got a field like tasks is here where it's got several things accumulated into one, that's where this gets really powerful, because now you can build a table out, and now you can start to see how slick this gets in terms of being able to organize it in the form of a an estimate. And I'll show you what my actual one looks like, because that one I spent actually a few hours really building it out and making it look slick. Because remember, we have other things here too that we can include, like the client. Right, so I can put the client information here. What else do I have? You just click this little X so you're not focused on that one field anymore. When you click on the field in the designer area, it will activate it on the left. So you just exit out. And what else might I want here? You know, what I would have to do actually, if I wanted to pull in the street address, is actually add that information in the jobs table, I think. Yeah, because I didn't include all the client's information. I just included the client name. So bottom line, you can have at it with this and you know, really play around and really design this to look really slick. I'll bring over what's on my other screen now so you can see what it can start to look like when it's really complete.
Can you show what line number does on that one?
Yes, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that actually brings up an important point. So I'll come back to that in a second. But here's what it looks like completely flushed out, right? And I've added, this is the guy, this is the name of the contractor, this was his logo. I told you it's very easy to add an image to this, so you can get that stuck on top. It's got the job number, the date accepted, right? Mine and my wife's name, my email, and so on. And then here's the list of all the stuff. And right now, the way this is organized, it doesn't give you subtotals. It just totals up what's due on everything, right? That's the way I chose to lay this out. And Alexa, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because one of the keys to this, to getting this to show up in the order that I wanted, to getting labor first and then change orders and then materials. And notice even in this dialog, you can see there's a little thumbnail for the attachment for the receipt for the materials, right? So the line number comes in because that's how once I choose the line number in this table, I need to include it first. So let's add that in, line number. And then I can move that up, let's say right to the beginning. And then over here, I can, where did it go? So if I choose, there's a sorting option further down here somewhere. So I can tell it to sort, but here, add sort. So I tell it to sort by line number, right? And then there is a way, I think if I just tell it to sort by line number, but then don't include it as a column, that's what I did, because I didn't want the line number. It's sort of unsightly. It doesn't mean anything to anybody else. It's just a way of driving the way this view looks, so it's in the right exact order. And just to sort of prove it, I'll go back over here where I had it in the other view. And if I go back to tasks here, and let's say I make stucco line 15. Let's go back here, and and actually it just took a second. I didn't even need to refresh. Notice it moved it. So but that was the whole reason. I'm glad you mentioned that, Alexa, because I actually forgot about that. But that was the whole reason for the line number, is literally to drive the way it appears here on this particular section. Right?
Very cool. Very cool.
Yep, that was the whole idea. So again, you can easily get from this, if you play around. I don't have time to show you how to do all the design, but you get the idea. Notice I have my the type is color coded, so we can add that in. I don't think I added the type in yet, so let's add that column in. Kind of definitely want that in there. See, so the type will show the colors, and again, I can reorder that. And that's pretty much how that works. Like I said, if you spend, some time on it, you'll get it from looking kind of bare bones like this to looking like a real professional looking kind of form. And of course, this can be printed, to a PDF and then emailed to somebody. I wish there was a way to just get this block embedded somewhere. And by the way, as you have other records, you toggle the record and it just pre-populates the whole thing based on the layout you've established for a different job number. So I can go to the next record and I can print that and so on. Okay, and then the other things you can do with this that's pretty cool is I can say, so remember Dennis was asking about, how to sort of carve out the different views, right? So in tasks, what I can do that's really cool, because again, this is Airtable. If I go to my job number 100,000 view, which again is only going to have 100,000, and I wanted to share this with somebody, the sharing is view specific. So this button here is what drives the sharing. I can click on that and choose this option that says create a shareable grid view link. So it's a shared view only to this. Nobody can see the whole database. They can only see what's in this view. And so I can send this link to somebody and say, and here's some additional options, whether I want them to be able to copy the data and so on. So I can send them this link, and if I copy this link, and I'll just go into a different browser session where I'm not logged into this, just so you can see what it would look like for them when I paste this link in. So anybody that I send this link to can get this view, and they can change their groupings and sorting, which is fine, But again, if I wanted to just share something like this with somebody, I can do it very easily with Airtable, as you've just seen.
Could you send something like that and ask them to check off the boxes of the things?
No, that's the one downside to this, because I wanted to do that. It's not interactive. The only way to make it interactive is you would have to invite them in as a collaborator, and then you have to start paying per user, for Airtable. So that could get expensive. So what I would do is you could even dump this into a CSV, get something in writing from them that confirms what they're approving and what they're not, and then you go in and actually check them off in Airtable. That way you have it documented to cover your butt, and and then you also have the utility of having things checked off the way you want them to in Airtable. That's the one downside. I wish there was a way to make this even minimally interactive for something like this. That would be beautiful if you could do that, but unfortunately you can't.
So did you sell this product to your contractor?
He was going to hire me to actually build it and run it for him, and then in all honesty, things have gone sideways with that contractor. He did a great job on a lot of stuff, but in the end he hasn't finished. He hasn't followed through. He stopped responding because obviously he was nearing the end of the work with me and he wasn't getting any more money out of me, so he I'm sure has other priorities now, and I may actually wind up taking him to small claims court because one of the major things he did was not done well at all. So I'm going to have to hire somebody else. We have a 900 square foot deck in the backyard. And one of the first things we hired him to do was to fix up that deck. A lot of the boards needed to be replaced. That part he did fine on, but then he painted it. And I don't know what happened with the paint, but I think he just used the wrong kind of paint. It says it's indoor, outdoor paint, but for some reason, dirt tracks on it and can't be washed off. It's like sticks to it. And he used an acrylic paint. And after asking around, I've been told he should have used a latex paint. Anyway, we've had it painted before we've done it ourselves and we never had this issue. So he was supposed to come back and repaint it, but we were saying we need it sanded too. They also put a layer of primer on it, which I don't think was necessary because most paints these days kind of have primer in it. And the primer was bubbling through the paint the first round. He patched that up. And anyway, so that part of it, things kind of just went really sideways. And then he wasn't following through. And then I caught him in a few lies. So I've kind of lost confidence in the guy. And, like I said, the writing was on the wall kind of in the beginning. It was clear he was either new or just inexperienced. He doesn't take credit cards, which is an issue. I have to either give him cash or a check. So lots of little things, indicators that, let's put it this way. I would definitely not hire him again. Anyway, so I don't think he's going to be hiring me to do this. At one point, he was all excited. He was like, "Oh, and I know all these other contractors that can do it," which I'm sure was just him blowing smoke, where. Anyway, so no, but I think what I have here is a pretty good foundation for something I can do a couple more videos on, and perhaps encourage people to, to engage me to help them develop something like this. I'm looking in the chat now. Larry says, "Oh my God, it's 23 degrees in Long Island this morning." I thought 45 was bad. 23 degrees. Larry, come to California. I will take you to coffee, and you won't even need the coffee as badly as you do there in those temperatures. And then the other cool thing that might be a way, if anybody's watching this now or later and thinking of getting my help with it, I just, as of last night, it was inspired by, and this is how a lot of my sort of products come about. Somebody was asking me about different sort of support options, and I offered different support plans, and they were kind of teetering on the fence about doing like a 5-hour plan with me, but they really didn't need 5 hours intensive. They really just wanted little questions ongoing to be answered, and then maybe once in a while a remote session with me. So I have now added. It's not actually here on the website officially yet. I have added a new live support plan that basically is Slack support. So 24/7, 365 Slack support, get questions answered, and a once a month remote session, which is $350 a month. So for $350 a month, you get unlimited Slack support, and you get one monthly 1-hour remote session with me, so I can log in remotely with you, answer any questions you have, and then discounted additional sessions. So if somebody wants, more than one session in a single month, you can get the extra sessions at a discount. So anyway, if anybody's interested in that, reach out to me, let me know. I'd be more than happy to spend an hour with you helping you build something like this, for yourself or for your own clients. And let's check the live Facebook feed and see if there's anybody out there. Nope, just a few people joined. No comments from the peanut gallery. So that's it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Any questions, thoughts, feedback, responses, reactions?
No, thank you. That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm glad.
thanks. It was great.
I have one question.
Yeah.
can you export data from, say, QBO into Airtable, or is the data not formatted right?
Well, no, you could export. It would be a couple steps. You'd dump data from QBO into a spreadsheet. You'd have to clean it because it really has to be in a flat file format. Then make sure your columns in the spreadsheet conform to the way they are in Airtable, and you can copy and paste. And from that point, in 2 seconds, you'd have your data populated in Airtable.
Okay.
So again, the answer to your question specifically is with a little bit of cleaning of the data, absolutely. And there is an option to import from a spreadsheet, but you would never want to do that with a database you've already laid out, because it's going to take what's in Excel and create extra columns and things if you don't already have the space made for those, and if they're not in the exact same order. So that's the moral of that story. Once you've built the database, the better thing to do, like I said, is just clean the data and then copy and paste. Much easier. So in fact, the original one that I did near the end of the year on how to use it as a financial accounting kind of management tool, the example I gave was a CSV file of a bank statement, where you kind of conformed your columns to what the layout looked like from what the bank gave you. And I had copied and pasted that data in for an entire month statement, and everything added up to the ending balance. I had to plug in the beginning balance on the first row in that database, and then everything added up to the right ending balance. So that's how, I don't remember if I mentioned that when I did that one, but that's how you actually reconcile it, is you just filter it for the date range for the month, and it should total up to exactly what the ending balance is. So anyway, hopefully this gives people some ideas. I would love to get your feedback. I'll get the recording of this up on the site hopefully within the next couple of days. Normally I try to do it on Saturday, but I'm teaching at Santa Monica College tomorrow, so I may not get to it until Sunday or Monday. But that's it.
I like the new support plan. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I've been wrestling with how to kind of value price my support options, and I feel like that's the way to do it, is give unlimited Slack support and then once a month one-on-one, so that people can kind of get the best of both worlds. And, I think I did, this one client I did it for, I suggested it for, immediately jumped on it because it was perfect. It's, because a lot of people, if they want to pay for 5 hours, they feel like they're paying a lot of money for more than what they're really going to need to use, at least immediately. Right. So I feel like, plus this way for me, it's ongoing recurring monthly revenue, which is, if you haven't noticed, the whole name of the game here, right, is building those recurring revenue streams. And this is something we're going to be talking about more and more in 97 and up this year, is how to build those recurring revenue streams and building the kinds of streams that you don't, this, of course, I have to show up for because I have to answer people's questions, but it's usually quick and easy. And at the beginning, the novelty will be there, so people will use it more and they'll have lots of questions. But my experience, because I've offered Slack support plans without the remote training, my experience is it's more at first, and then it kind of tapers off to where the clients seem to love to know they have it as a resource. They come in maybe a few times a month with some questions, sometimes a little bit more. Right now, it's a little heavier because people have questions about 1099 processing and so on. But it tapers off. I think one of the fears we have around offering something like this is that we're going to get overwhelmed and inundated, and that just hasn't been my experience at all. So don't worry, don't fear, keep calm, offer it. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll
Bye.
see you all around.
Thank you. Feel better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.